Hello and welcome back to Building Roots Abroad. I'm Giovanna, your host and a curious podcast lover who is always looking for new stories. This podcast is all about real people who've been brave enough to build careers, friendships, and entire lives far from home. Today, we will speak with Cecilia, an Italian-born and Kenyan-raised academic who has lived and worked in many continents. Growing up with parents who were already world citizens themselves, Cecilia experienced firsthand the richness and complexity of living abroad. She's built her life in many places, as Italy, Kenya, France, Uganda, and now Australia, where she's currently working as a researcher and a PhD candidate focused on supporting Indigenous communities in Australia. Let's dive into Cecilia's experiences, her work, and what it means to truly build roots when you've been raised across borders. Hi guys, today we are here with Cecilia, but before we go to the questions we have for her today, I'll just let her introduce herself first.
Hey, I'm Cecilia. I am a social scientist and researcher living in Australia, and I'm so excited to share my journey with you, and I know how passionate you are about this topic, so really happy to be here and share my journey.
That would be, in my opinion, one of our biggest episodes and the one that I will definitely love the most because we have so much stuff to cover. So we're going to start from, I think, the beginning of your whole journey, which was the fact that she was born in Italy, but she grew up in another country, which was Kenya. So I just want you to talk a little about that.
So growing up in Kenya was honestly amazing. It's such a beautiful country with such a rich culture. I'm so grateful to all the people that had an imprint on my upbringing. It's such a beautiful country. And I think something that my parents did really well and that they were so passionate about was keeping my Italian culture strong. So, I grew up very Italian. I grew up speaking Italian at home and learning about my culture and my background and my heritage while still having a very strong connection to Kenya and my Kenyan friends and the Kenyan community. So I think I was very, very lucky in that sense where I managed to get a strong balance of both, because I know a lot of people who grow up in different countries, they tend to lose that connection. So I think, something that was really important to my parents and how they did it was to make sure our culture was kept strong. But growing up in Kenya was incredible.
That's so good. And how was growing up in this position that you kind of you are Italian in Kenya, but maybe in Italy, she lives in Kenya for your relatives and everything? I know it's a hard question, but I think you kind of grow up with that already.
Yeah, look, it's such a hard question because I feel like identity crisis is something that I myself and a lot of my friends really struggled with a lot because of what you just said. Sometimes you're too foreign for home and you're too foreign for where you live and where you're from. And so that was something really hard for me. And, through adulthood, I think something that's really resonated well with me is home is where my parents are and it's where I am. And it's not necessarily a place, but it's where I feel myself connected to where I am in that moment, or where my parents feel connected. Because I really struggled with that growing up. That sense of identity, I feel, was something really challenging for me. And I know it was for a lot of my friends as well.
When you say for your friends as well, is that because you study in international schools?
Yeah, so I went to an international school in Kenya. There was 60 nationalities at my school.
Oh, wow.
So it was a massive multicultural community, but that also brought in a sense of community in that we could all relate to each other. I had friends from Denmark, Finland, France. There was a really, really broad range. But I think that gave us a sense of community as well, where we could resonate with each other's experiences.
Yeah, that's so cool because you have that since you were a kid. So I think moving across countries is kind of more natural than for most of people we are listening here. So what was the point that felt that you felt connected to Kenya, since you were international, in an international school, and then your family was actually back in Italy apart from your parents and your brother?
So I think it's that footprint phase of your childhood. That's where I felt the connection. I also speak Swahili, so I'm able to communicate in the language, which is a strong point of connection for me with locals. Even when I go back now, being able to communicate with people from Kenya makes me sort of feel this was home. Maybe it still is in some sense.
Yeah.
But definitely that upbringing phase as being a child. I grew up in a very remote area, so not a lot of people spoke English where I grew up. So yeah, definitely those fundamental years, I would say, are the earlier years. That was for me. That was the point where I felt more. Yeah.
Cool. And then how many languages do you speak again?
Yeah. I speak 4 languages. I speak Swahili, French, Italian, and English. Yeah.
Nice. So they also speak English?
They also speak English.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, I spoke English at school. But like I said, because I grew up in a very regional area, I didn't really have a choice but to learn Swahili when I was a kid, because all the other kids, that's how they communicated.
Yeah.
So, and my parents were at work most of the day. So yeah, that's how that came along.
And about the fact that your parents moved to Kenya, was that a work thing? I think I really want them to come and be a guest very soon. We will see when they come to Australia to visit her. If you can just briefly say why they moved to Kenya in the first place.
Yeah, so my dad was working, my dad's a vet by trade, so he's got a background in veterinary public health. And he was working in the government system in Italy, and he got an offer for a 1-year contract in 1995 to go to Kenya and help a large-scale farm, sort of build up their pastoral / veterinary systems.
Wow.
And he told my mom, it's just a 1-year contract. We'll just go there, experience it, and then we'll come back. And they're still in East Africa till now.
Yeah, they're still living there.
Yep, they're still living there. So it was very much for work. My dad wanted to diversify his work, and he also sensed that things in Italy economically were not going very well. And he maybe told my mom we should keep the option open to maybe start exploring opportunities overseas in case the economy here starts to not perform as what we would like it to. And his prediction, I think, was right, because they ended up staying in Kenya. They were so happy.
Yeah, that's so cool. And then growing up with such an international background, how do you feel that helped you adapting to new environments? Do you feel, because you have that since you're a kid, helped you more than others maybe?
I think yes. I think it makes things a little bit easier in the sense that you feel like an outsider your whole life, and so you're able to empathize with people from different countries a lot easier.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I don't even remember nationality being the first thing that I thought of. It was always
the person,
who you are as a person, and not so much their background. But I think that comes later in life, and I think in adulthood it's made it a lot easier to make friends as well, because when you meet someone from, I don't know, Malaysia or China, you're I know how to talk about these things from your country, because I've met people from your country before, and we can talk about topics that we both know about. So I think it opens your horizon in that sense.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful because it's such a good way to connect to others. You just don't label them, maybe in China they eat a specific dish that you used to see your friend at school eating. Yeah, I love that. So transitioning to the friends moment of your life, how was that? Why did you decide to do this big step, and what did you do in France? And
yeah, so the main reason really is I graduated high school quite young. I was 16, so I'm a July baby, that's why.
Okay.
So I didn't know what I wanted to study at university, and I remember telling my parents, I don't know what I want to study, I think I want to do a gap year, and they were so supportive. They were like, absolutely do it, but make sure you do something that is going to add value to your future. We don't want you just traveling for the sake of traveling. And I was like, well, actually, I really want to learn French, because I felt like I'd done French so much in school, but I hadn't learned anything. So I was like, I really want to actually learn how to speak French. And my parents had friends in France, and they said, okay, well, we can set up, maybe an au pair system where you go and stay with the family, and they already knew them. So it was really easy for me. So yeah, that's sort of what pushed me towards, I was like, yeah, let's do it. We're going to France.
So good. Yeah. And how was that? How was you going to France when you were still a teenager?
Yeah, it was very different for me. Actually, massive culture shock, because...
Is it?
Yeah, because it was the first time I had actually lived through a full European winter. So physiologically, I actually started not doing very well due to the cold. So the summer was amazing, spring was incredible. But as soon as the winter hit, I remember being like, what am I doing here? I think it's time to go back home. So that was the first thing that was really different for me, was it was very cold. And that was something my body was not used to, and I had not anticipated for such a large change. So that definitely came as a shock. But I feel like looking back now and I think of 17 and I'm like, wow, I was such a baby. But at that time, I remember feeling like such an adult.
Yeah,
like
so you felt ready.
Yeah, I remember feeling like everything's fine. Like, I absolutely have got this. Like, I can do this.
Yeah, and then comparing to Kenya was just more the weather then.
Yeah, the weather, the people, of course. Like, French people have a different kind of lifestyle, different, different aura, different energy.
Like, not that warm as, like, I suppose.
Yeah, just different in that sense, I would say.
Was like a small city, or?
Yeah, so I was in a very small town.
Yeah, maybe that's why.
Yeah, very small town in Collonges-sous-Salève, next to Geneva. So a little bit isolating in that sense as well. Because I'd come from a city where I knew everyone. Like, you go to a pub, like, you know everyone in the pub, but this was different for me, and yeah, definitely felt a little bit isolating.
Yeah. So after leaving France for a year, how did like Uganda come into place? Like, because I believe you then straight away moved to Uganda. Yeah,
I moved straight away. So when I was in France, I actually started doing my university application processes. So I applied to Spain, Germany, and Australia. Was actually in France. I met a girl from Brisbane. Shout out to Jane if you're listening to this. So in my French class, there was this girl, and she was like, I'm from Australia. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. Whereabouts in Australia are you from? And she was like, I'm from Brisbane. I was like, I've never heard of Brisbane.
It's not quite famous.
Yeah. And I was like, look, I'm actually exploring universities. Like, would Australia be worthwhile? And she was like, absolutely, yes. And she basically sold me to the University of Queensland.
Sold very well there.
Yeah. So I was like, okay, I'm going to try put in an application. But what had happened is in those few weeks, it was time for me to go back home to Uganda. I think I was done with the France phase. And while I was waiting for universities to respond, my dad was like, I don't want you sitting around doing nothing. Let's try get you an internship.
Nice.
Let's try get you an internship for a large organization so you can at least get some work experience before you start, He just didn't want me sitting around basically all day.
Yeah. He's right.
Yeah, exactly. Which I'm so grateful for because, he got me a really good contact at Save the Children International, which is a really large organization doing amazing work all over the world. And they needed someone in Uganda to help them with data collection in their research team. So I started doing, data collection on a few projects for them in regional and remote areas. And all this while I was waiting for university approvals, and then I started the visa process for Australia shortly after,
So how long was this internship for?
So it was 6 months with Save the Children, and another 6 months with another organization called the Belgian Cooperative Organization. And so it was all in all, it was 1 year. Also because I think low-key in my heart, I really enjoyed the work, but my dad noticed and he was like, no, you need to go get a university degree. Don't get too comfortable, because I really enjoyed the fact that I was working, earning not that much as an intern, but I was working and doing something I was really passionate about. So I was actually working in public health, sexual health as well. So I think that's where the interest sort of started for my career journey,
Yeah, I see. So then you were already in this internship when you were, 18?
Yeah, so I must have been 18 by then,
And then living in Uganda was by yourself, or is that is that quite close?
No, so my parents had moved to Uganda by that time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so my parents were there, my dad was working there. So that's why from France I had gone to Uganda, because that's when my parents had moved to Uganda at that time.
They were there.
So I was sort of joining them.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Amazing. So, how did the internship shape the decisions of your career? I know you mentioned you're glad that you did the internship, but then this played a role on your decision to study the course you did, and then kind of the start of your career, do you feel? Yeah,
100%. So in my internship, I was doing, like I said, data collection, and I started doing data analysis. I had a senior on my team that was teaching me how to analyze data. And I remember just this monumental moment sitting there, looking at this massive Excel spreadsheet with all this data I had collected, and putting it together into all these visualizations for a presentation. And I remember being so inspired by the story I was telling with that data. And I remember that was the moment. And it was a really, it was in the evening. We had this submission due. And we were sitting there. And I remember this monumental moment being like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to tell a story through data, and
so good.
that's where I started developing a passion for research and public health research specifically. So I think that was the monumental moment for me, was just watching all... I know it sounds boring, but...
No, it's actually pretty cool.
Watching this data and being so inspired.
Yeah, because it's also a very real-life internship.
Yeah.
It's not like,
Yeah.
I was just watching videos and people were just telling me to do stuff. You were actually working for real.
Exactly.
And getting the experience.
Yeah.
So
but
good.
that's definitely what prompted me to, look into the social sciences program at UQ, because that's the program I was looking at. So I think that was the reassurance that I'm actually going in to do what I want to do.
Yeah. Just for context, UQ is the University of Queensland.
The University of Queensland, yes.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so,
I should...
Oh, no, that's okay. Because, I'm pretty sure a lot of people from Queensland will know, but I don't know. So then I believe you got the offer for UQ. How did you decide, I'm not coming back to Europe, I really want Brisbane? Like, how was like the actual decision through universities?
So it was crazy because the Australian one came through, and I just remember having this strong gut feeling and just going straight to my parents and just saying, I'm moving to Australia.
Wow.
And they both looked at me like I was insane.
Yeah.
They were like, because they didn't even know it was an option.
They didn't know
I hadn't really talked to them much. For me, my main focus was either the Netherlands, Germany, Spain. It was very Europe focused.
Okay. But they knew you've applied.
They knew I was exploring the option, but they didn't know it was that concrete of like, guys, I'm going like this, I'm leaving on this date. So I just went up to them and I was like, I'm going to Australia. I don't know why. I didn't even wait. I think I was still waiting on like 3 or 4 responses. But for that one, I just felt this gut-wrenching feeling of like, this is where I need to start a new life. And they were so supportive. They were like, and I told them, I was like, I promise I'm going to go do my degree and I will come back.
Oh, that's such
and
a
I'm
lie.
still here today, but yeah. But they were so supportive, yeah.
So she's now here for like, what, 8 years?
Yeah, nearly 8 years, 7.5 years.
So from you're 19 till now?
Yes.
Like you were 19 when you moved? Or?
Yes, I was 19 when I arrived, yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. So then, having experienced different cultures, settings already, how was your expectations towards Australia? How was your like experience when you first came and uni and everything? I'm pretty sure you were already familiar with the language, but not with the country.
So I actually had 0 expectations. Hey, I was like, I'm just gonna go in with a blank view, blank mind. I should also add, my visa process took really long. It took 4 to 5 months for me to do my medicals and everything in place. So I think by the time my visa came through, I was like, I need to leave. Like, I'm flying out tomorrow. Like, I was so determined to just go that I hadn't actually sat down and reflected on what I was expecting. I think it was just like I just need to go and start my degree. That's how I felt. Because I already felt a little bit behind. Even though I wasn't, I felt like all my friends were already at university.
Oh, yeah, that's feeling when you're like a teenager. And you're just like, oh, this person is already at uni. That one is already almost finishing. And we just compare ourselves a lot.
Exactly. And mind you, like my friends in Kenya, I think were already entering the 2nd year of university at that point. So I really felt that urgency. So I think that clouded my judgment in terms of expectations. I didn't really know what to expect.
Yeah.
But it was definitely very different from what I expected, I think. Because when I arrived, I was like, wow, this is so different, but in such a good way.
Yeah.
Australia really made a strong first impression for me. I was very immediately happy when I arrived,
Nice, that's so good. And then your degree was what, 4 years?
Yeah. So I did a few months of a foundation program through UQ, and then I went straight into my degree.
Okay.
So that was, 3.5 years, I would say.
Okay, so what is the foundation program? It's just...
So the reason a foundation program is sort of like a university preparation program. The reason I did that was the university said, we do have this like prep program if you're worried about transitioning from a British curriculum into an Australian curriculum. And I took it up. I was like, yeah, I'm going to do that because I'm very grateful for that because they prepared me for the social sciences degree really well, but it was still within the University of Queensland.
Okay.
So I would say the degree is 3 years, but sort of 3.5 to 4,
And do you have to like do honours in that degree?
No, because your final year is sort of a research project. You have the option of doing honours. I didn't take it because my final year was a research project anyway, so I felt like I was sort of doing an honours equivalent.
Yeah, true. Nice. And then how like you started building your career in social sciences and also research from that bachelor degree? Was that during uni already, or how was it like the job situation here? Did you like straight away go into the field, or you had like some side gigs? All international students we've been talking to, how was the transition for you for like the real life,
the real world?
Yeah.
Is that during uni?
Yeah, like in Australia in general.
So when I first started my university degree, obviously my parents were supporting me and very supportive, but I did find a part-time job in hospitality because I wanted to save money and make a bit extra.
Yeah, for sure.
But when I was I think a year and a half into my degree, I started working in social sciences. I found a research role very similar to what I was doing in my internship for an organization here called Kaima Foundation. So they do a lot of work of very similar to what I was doing for Save the Children. And so I actually dived deep straight back into my field throughout most of my university degree. So I was working only part-time for them, but it was good because it meant that I was still building my work experience while studying. I think that was really helpful in terms of staying in the field and not feeling disconnected.
Yeah, true. And then is that the place you're still working now, or?
No, so I finished up at Kaima, I think the year I graduated, and then I now work at the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Community Health Service, which I started a few days after graduating, so that week.
Good. Yeah. Great. And then also you're now doing a PhD in social sciences. Yeah. So how was this for you? Did you kind of like feel that you would like to study more? Also how you went from the bachelor straight away to the PhD? I don't know if that's an Australian thing, but I feel that if you have a lot of research experience, you kind of make to the PhD a bit easier than going through the masters and blah blah blah.
Yeah, that's right. What you've said is exactly right. So I think now where I'm at now is, I think over the years through the internship and work experience while studying, I accumulated almost 6 to 7 years of research experience, which was really helpful because when I finished my bachelor, I continued working into a research role for 3.5 years full time. And I feel like I got to the point in my career where the career progression kind of, the question that everyone was always asking me, because I work in research, everyone has a PhD in research. The question everyone was always asking is, when are you starting? And that was my biggest drive because apart from the fact that I'm very passionate about public health and women's health and Indigenous health specifically, but I think that for me just felt like the next move, that I really want to do a PhD because I'm passionate about what I'm doing and I just want to do my own research. And I want that to be formalized through my own work.
And then on top of that, do you mind just sharing what's your research about? Or
yeah, so I'm doing my PhD is basically in maternal and children's health. So I'm evaluating the birthing in our community and the Deadly Fit Mums program, which is an Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander maternal health service. So I'm basically looking at the clinical indicators of mums and their babies that go through this service to see whether there are improvements or not, or whether clinical outcomes are positive for mothers that birth through a culturally safe model of care. Yeah.
Great, nice.
So I get to spend a lot of time with very cute babies.
That's so cute. Yeah. So then, are you managing to work still? How is that going for you? Like you're studying and working at the same time?
Yeah. So I did cut back a little bit on my work. So I'm working part-time. And doing my PhD as well at the same time. So I think it's very manageable. And like I said, I feel like if you're already working in research, it's not much different than just taking on a new project.
True,
it kind of just feels like I've just been assigned another project to manage.
Task, yeah.
Yeah. With the difference that it's 3.5 years, but...
yeah. So you're kind of like...
stuck to it. Yeah. And it's your own. There's no one sort of telling you what to do. It's just sort of your own research.
Your pace as well.
Yeah, which is amazing. But I think I'm managing okay. But we'll touch base about that. That might change in a few years.
Yeah, of course. Because she just started
in
this semester?
Yeah, in August, I think. Yeah, so a few months ago.
Yeah, cool. I think just to wrap up a bit the topic of like your work experience and your job itself, Can you tell us a little bit more about like what you do and how is like your actual research job more than just a PhD?
Yeah, sure. So I work as a research advisor in the research department of a health service. And the health service that I work for is an Indigenous specific health service, which means all the clients that we serve are Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people. So working in the research department sort of means that we work across a wide range of projects. So like some projects we're looking at, the experience of kinship and foster carers, or we're looking at the housing experiences of some of our clients, and then maybe looking at some of their clinical data to see, what the relationship is between homelessness and, clinical uptake and accessibility. So basically, I work with a lot of health data and well-being data as well, to tell stories and to also tell our service how we're performing and what areas we need to improve on, and bringing that feedback back to the teams to improve what we're doing, basically.
That's beautiful, because literally what you mentioned that you loved about your internship, so you made it like to keep working with that. Nice. So now getting some more insights on the fact that you lived in so many countries, is speaking multiple languages and living in such like diverse places across your life, how has language and also a bit more on the identity topic make you connect to others? Do you feel Australia is a place that you really like because of that, because here is very multicultural, or how the fact that you speak 4 languages and things like that connect to your personality?
I think language is the number one bridge to connection, because I really felt the difference. Like, for example, in France, I felt the difference from when I first arrived and I couldn't speak a word of French, especially being in such a remote area. And then when I finally picked up French, and I picked it up really fast because no one could speak English to me, so I felt so disconnected in that sense.
That's so interesting.
The number one thing I noticed when I started to speak French to people, the report was different. People treated you differently. A, because they could understand what you were saying, but B, is because they could actually help you. Like, if you wanted a bus ticket, they actually knew how to help you. And I felt that even with friendships, I was actually able to build friendships, not just with the international community, but with French people as well, because I could actually be part of the conversation and be part of the jokes and the understanding. So I definitely think language is the number one bridge to being integrated into that culture. Definitely. But also just being around multicultural and like-minded people. Like you said, in Australia, I arrived here already speaking English, but I feel like being around people, like yourself and other friends that have an international sort of background, it gives us something to resonate with. Like, how many times have we cried because we miss our families? We all can understand our journeys. Even though our journeys are so different, I feel like finding a community of people that can resonate with what you're going through. Like, as much as I love my Australian friends, they just don't get it sometimes.
Yeah, the connection is different, because that's our point.
And the empathy is different as well. I feel like as international people, we empathize with each other differently, because we know what it's like to be locked in a country because of COVID for 3 years and not seeing our parents, for example.
Yeah, that was tough. I think that's when we met.
Yes, exactly. It is, So I think things like that, it definitely makes it easier to be around people that can resonate with your journey and your struggles.
I think it's very nice that you mentioned that language was a point of connection, because especially me knowing a lot of people in the Brazilian community, I've met so many that they've been here like 20 years and they do not, I think they didn't need that much English, because maybe they were very close to the community. They could make their life with the community. And I see how much they are not very connected to the country still. So I think is what you're talking about in France or even other countries, I think is quite hard if you don't invest on this first step of like moving abroad, which is the language, unfortunately. So
100%. And I think, I don't think it's anyone to blame but our human brain, because I think that the human brain feels connected to familiarity. And I see that a lot with my parents. When I was growing up, they always had Italian friends around them, because with Italian friends, they had that connection. But at the same time,
you have to get out of the comfort zone, unfortunately.
You need to get out of that bubble. You need to try and step out and actually try and make friends from different countries. A, because you will learn so much about different cultures and that enriches you as a person. But B, you actually, you'll be surprised by how much in common you have with people from different countries as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I feel the main challenge that I faced was like, oh, they don't know how funny my jokes and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, they would never understand what I'm saying. This was my first job, maybe. And then now I really feel my coworkers now, they know me, not super fully, because of course I'm not speaking Portuguese, which is my comfortable like, language. But I really feel what you mentioned. I really feel now people can understand me and they understand what I am, which is, I think, is what, unfortunately, if you don't get out of the comfortable zone, these people that I know, unfortunately, they just cannot cross the line.
Yeah.
And
I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, very cool. Considering we talked about growing up in Kenya, living in France, Uganda, and now living in Australia, do you feel more connected to one specific place? I know it's like a funny question, but maybe it can be even Australia, because you are kind of like living for real now here. Do you feel like now you're more like Queenslander, 4 a.m. iced latte, or you feel more like a mix of everything?
Yeah, so it's interesting you say that, because I feel like my journey hasn't ended.
Nice.
I feel like Australia is not the end for me. I feel like, I don't know why, I have this sensation that in a few years I'm going to try and explore a new part of the world. So, but I feel like in all those places I've picked up something. So I've picked up the 5 a.m. walk from Australia, but I've also picked up my cultural background and my heritage, in that my ways of doing that stem from my Italian background, but also ways of doing that probably stem from Kenya and Uganda. And I just feel like I've picked up all these things along the way, but I don't feel a strong connection to anywhere really. It's really hard to explain. As much as I love Australia, I feel a strong connection within myself, and that's the definition of home I'm really trying to emphasize in my life and through my own work, my own internal work. And so I wouldn't say I feel a strong connection to one place in particular, because I feel like my journey hasn't ended.
That's so cool, actually.
So I don't know how to explain it. I don't even know if I'm making sense, but I just feel like I'm still in a transition, even though I've picked up a lot along the way. But I think that sense of home will always be my parents, my family, and myself, and where I am.
I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's good that you feel that, because also means that you're just not like willing to be in the comfort zone, you know, like some people they may have this sensation that you do, but they don't listen, because they're like, oh, like that is fine, it is what it is. I think now I have my job, I have my things, and you kind of like need to be brave enough to change it again, to be honest.
Definitely.
I think if someone decides to even leave their own country or the country that they built some stuff on, is already very brave. So you to listen this inner voice is very cool and very interesting as well. So I can't definitely make sense for me. I think just to close up a little bit, if you could give an advice to someone about taking their first step into a new country, I think you probably have many, but the main advice you think is the key thing to remember?
Just do it. Don't think about it. Just do it. I feel like we overthink things so much, and I feel and when I look back at every move I've made, I've never thought about it. Like it's bad to say, but I've always just been like, we're doing this. It's happening. Like, don't overthink it. Just do it. Because I feel like the more you start overthinking it, the more you get into your thoughts, and that's when the anxiety can start to creep in. So my first point of advice would be, if your heart has told you that it's time to go, follow it. Do it. That means it's time to go. That means it's time for you to move on from that place, and you can come back and it's fine. But I think that my first point of advice would be, just follow that instinct.
Love that. So I think for the last question, which is so interesting because she was the one that we had the most number of questions, but I think the conversation flowed so well that we already kind of closing. But what does Building Roots Abroad, which is our project name, means to you? What does this keyword brings to you?
Yeah, wow. It's such a powerful, I think the word roots is so powerful to me because it comes back to community.
Yeah.
That's the first thing that comes to my mind because, you know, we've all been through our own struggles. And the one thing we have when we're far away from family is community and the friends we've made. And I think that that's everything to me is when you're building something abroad, is making sure you have a strong community around you and good people.
Yeah.
Make sure you are surrounded by good people. Like, you know, those people where your nervous system just feels relaxed when you're around them?
Yeah.
Make sure those are the people you're around because your family won't be there. It's the people, it's when the COVID lockdowns happen and the borders are closed, those are the people that are going to be around you. And I think that phrase, the first thing I think of is community and the people and the connections we make. They are all part of our journey. That would probably be how I establish roots abroad is the people I choose to share that with.
True. And do you feel you have your community in Australia?
I would say, yeah, I'm surrounded by amazing people.
More Australians or more like international?
A mix of everything. I think a mix of both. Yeah,
Nice.
a mix of everything, I would say. And, you know, people that have been there for me, people that have been there for me from day one, people that have only been there for me in the past 2 months. You know, I feel like it's all those connections that we make along the way that make us who we are. They make our journey who we are as well. So I think that's what that is.
Nice. And just the like polemic question, but not very polemic because you kind of already touched base on that. Do you feel you're gonna keep building your roots in Australia or abroad? Everyone has different answers. So.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like my journey is not done, not finishing here. I still have this sense that I'm going somewhere. I don't know where, haven't explored it yet, but I have this feeling that in the next 2 or 3 years, that my journey is taking me somewhere else. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that as an open-ended answer.
Yeah, of course.
Because I don't know.
Yeah, and also in 2 years you're gonna be like reaching 10 years of Australia.
Yeah,
so it's quite already part of you. I don't even think the building root, like have you built roots here? Obviously, 10 years is a lot.
Yeah.
In the future.
Yeah, so, definitely.
So I'm very happy with our chat today. I'm very glad to have you as a friend, and thank you so much for like supporting all of this. And also you were the first person that I talked about the whole building roots abroad. So I'm so glad about everything. Do you have anything to add on before we close?
No, just thank you so much for allowing me to share in this space and for creating such a safe space for people to share their journey, because I know for some people it's not easy, especially for the ones where it's been a bit challenging. But I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm so excited to hear about all the other episodes and everyone else's journey. And it's so amazing that you are starting to build a community, and I think we can build a community from this. So I think that's so exciting. So thank you so much.
So good. We're so glad that we have so much inspiring people around us.
Definitely.
So thank you very much, guys, and see you next time.